Today I visited with artist Grant Kniffen from St. Louis, Missouri. I'm Rick J, and this is Spotlight on the Arts. Welcome to Spotlight on the Arts. Please welcome with me, if you would, Mr. Grant Kniffen from St. Louis, Missouri. Well, welcome, Grant. We've been looking forward to this for a long time. So welcome aboard.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we were scheduled during COVID and that kind of threw it all apart. And I'm glad we got to reconnect this summer.
Yes, me too. Fortunately, meeting there at the State Fair Top 50. And gosh, I almost forgot what you looked like from previous one. So it was a great, should we say, meeting. It was nice to bump into you that
Yeah.
time. So, well, I'm really truly excited, as you can see, to turn the spotlight on you today. So, let's go ahead and share some of Grant Niffen's past history and share your awesome art. So, um, uh, I guess should say, since it's your first time with me, can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about Grant Niffen?
Well, I was born and grew up in St. Louis County. Went to high school there also, and later on, after graduating from Northeast Missouri State back then, Truman University now, I was a couple of years in South Carolina, then came back and taught at my old high school for 27 years.
Oh
And
my, you're a
so
retired art instructor, or
yes, I taught a lot of ceramics, and then in the first half of my career, and then sculpture, and then did painting and all the drawing and such, kind of on the second half. And I also coached football for most of those years, and track. So it was kind of neat breaking the stereotype for some people
yes,
being an
I
assistant
did
football
hear
coach.
about you coaching football and track. So that was a great, should we say, time in your life, and not only as a instructor of art, but also coaching those young men and football and track, I'm sure.
Sure, it was great. And then uh, be married 40 years to my wife Donita next June,
Oh
and
my.
had a couple, have had a boy and a girl, and our son's in Kansas City, and our
Uh-huh.
daughter's a teacher here, and then we keep our granddaughters a couple days, about 3 days a week, and so we've had it have a real busy, involved in the community, and an elder at the O'Fallon Church of Christ here, and I cut the grass. So
I hear you. Well, congratulations to you both on the upcoming 40 years. That's great. And I know you've got to be feel blessed with the grandchildren.
oh
So
yeah, oh yeah.
excellent. Well, can you share with us how you became first inspired to be an artist? How far does this go back? Does it go back, like, to me, maybe my DNA and writing on the bedroom walls on the farm at age 4 years old? So,
Well, I do remember this. I wasn't in elementary school. I was not a good math student, and never became a great one. But my mom had saved all my homework papers with all my doodles on it, and
uh,
so I was always drawing. Maybe I should have been doing my math instead. But and so yeah, I think yeah, for as long as I could remember, I think my mom had some innate talent and such, but she was never able to really fully develop it. And but I just had an attraction. I was drawn to the work of the, those great golden age illustrators like N.C. Wyeth and Frank Schoonover, and
Oh, yes.
very much our own Thomas Hart Benton,
Oh, yes.
and the Western art of Charlie Russell and
Oh, my, yes.
Remington. So I was into all that, and I would spend hours and hours just poring over books I get from the library of those things, because I love those subjects that they
Yes.
also did, and so that was very influential. And I was always drawing, and of course comic books, and I thought I wanted to be a comic book artist.
Oh, I see.
But that kind of changed when my old track coach in high school, toward the end of the last season, asked me if I'd consider going into teaching so I could come back and coach. And all of a sudden, kind of the light bulb went on, and
Yes.
and that allowed me to do the things I enjoyed much, and also to kind of share that.
Like a whole package you had all of a
Yeah,
sudden in
yeah.
life is blessed with. Now, what age do you recall really starting being interested in those books and those? I see a reflection of all those gentlemen that you mentioned in your work. So,
Yeah, well, I think it is, and many others that some came later. We're all a product of many things, whether we recognize
yes, yes,
it or not, and you don't always know why you like things or why you're attracted to things, and hopefully over time you kind of figure that out. And
yes,
and so took me a while on some of that. You're searching, and then you start kind of developing. But anyhow, so yeah, it was probably later elementary school. Again, I was always drawing, getting in drawing contests with different people in the class.
yes.
I'm not saying I was the best, but I was determined.
Right. Now you're reaching an older age as a grandfather. What continues you to inspire you as an artist? I've saw your work in Sedalia, Missouri, at the center there, and then naturally running into you finally again at the Missouri State Fair, top 50. So what inspires you? Do you have more time? I know COVID gave me a lot of time to get behind the brush again.
Well, yeah, I now do I use it all efficiently? That's a whole different question, but yeah, I'm able to kind of focus a little bit more. I'd say that I kind of started off, I would consider, as a painter, as a kind of a hopeless Hudson River School kind of a painter, and did lots of landscapes and so on. I had a man when I was in college who was a friend of my folks, a really good artist here in St. Louis. His name was Jerry Thomas, and he took me under his wing.
Oh,
Actually, he taught me more in 5 or 6 weeks one summer than 5 years up at Northeast, actually. And so that provided a great start and a great foundation. And then again, I was a regionalist, and really worked into that. And then frankly, when I kind of started switching over from ceramics, when I was teaching, after about 12 or 13 years in that side of it, I kind of, I mean, I'd always taught painting, but I had explored cubism and modernism with my
oh
paintings,
yes. Hmm.
because I wanted them to know. And so when I took over all the kind of more of the 2D stuff, I realized that there's a lot I needed to know, because I wanted to pass it on to the students, and I wasn't great in knowledge of modernism or contemporary art. And
Uh-huh.
so I took a program up at the Chicago Art Institute called TICA, Teacher Institute for Contemporary Art, and it was a fabulous thing. It was a whole week up there, and we not only were exposed to current artists and lectures, but we also had studio time. And I realized that I in that studio time where I got to paint with models and so on, that I was much better at figure work than I gave myself credit for, and so I'd always wanted to get figures into my work, but rarely did, because I figure those are up to the level. And
Yes.
so that kind of really opened up a lot of things. And then in teaching art history, AP art history, which I had always loved anyway, but just I started deciding that I wanted to apply the thinking of past isms and periods and stuff to my subject matter, which was landscape, regional, Western, music, and so on and so forth, to see what might happen and develop. And so it evolved over time.
And now, well, of course, we're sharing a lot of your art here on the timeline as we talk. So now I see where that Charlie Russell, I saw that in your paintings when so all of a sudden I see where that Charlie Russell, now that you mention it, has come into play. So yes, that's great. Now we're going to get in more in depth to how you create something and your type of work of that, and some favorites in the second half. Before time gets away from us, though, here in the first half, I'd like to ask you to go ahead and give us your contact information as far as reaching you for further information, explanation, or even maybe a commission that someone would want to approach you on. So if you can, give me some contact info, Instagram,
Okay.
or
email. Well, I have a website that my son developed for me, because he's really good at all that kind of stuff, and I'm certainly not. And so that is my last name, Kniffen, Kniff, as in Frank, En, art at, or excuse me, kniffenart.com.
Excellent.
And so sorry, I'm not used to saying all this.
We'll put that on the a ticker tape here run below our conversation.
And so on there, it shows current works that I have, and ones that I no longer do because they sold or were commissioned, so people can kind of see the kind of work I do. It's organized kind of by subject matter. My email is last name Kniffen, then the letter G for Grant at yahoo.com. And that information is also on the website. And so if anybody's interested or wants to contact me, you can do it in those ways.
Yes, great. Well, I think it's about time to take a break. So let's take a quick break, and then we'll get back to more in depth into what you would like to share with those viewers worldwide now, thanks to our new platform. So everyone stay tuned, and if you will, we'll be back after these messages. And again, when I say after the break, we'll fill you in on his favorite subject matter, the materials used, maybe his special ways that he'd like to share with you in completing a work of art, and those techniques, even using those different materials that he also uses and he would like to share with you. So there's much more here on Spotlight on the Arts. So don't go away. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, and welcome back as I continue the conversation with my special guest here on Spotlight on the Arts, artist Grant Kniffen from St. Louis, Missouri. Welcome back, Grant, and everyone. Grant, before the break, you shared a lot of information, so let's continue along those lines of thought and expression. Would you please sort of describe your type of art and how that came about with your skills considered.
Well, it was interesting when I was in college. I kind of had some struggles with my instructors because I didn't have a manifesto for the existence of my art in the universe at that time,
Ah,
and
good.
and they wanted that deep content and deep, all those kind of things, and I just wasn't ready for that
They
at
probably
that.
didn't recognize Cubanism at that time much.
Well, no, that was, but I was struggling and focusing on just developing my technique to depict what I saw, and
Oh,
so
I see.
that was my focus. And then it was kind of over time that as you do that and have done it enough, a lot of times you want to, you get bored is not necessarily the right word, but you want to explore more,
You
and
want
you
to dig deeper, huh?
yeah, dig deeper. And as I said, I started teaching my painting class about cubism because I know they needed to do it. And what we would do is we'd do a painting of a still life that they all individually brought in of their
Ah,
own,
uh-huh.
and they would do it in a more realistic type way from observation and so on. And then I made them do the same subject in cubism. And
Yes.
so
Uh,
and so in that they got to directly see and understand that transition,
yes.
or at least the beginnings of that. Well, at the same time, I was experimenting on that in my own work, and
Uh-huh.
uh, and kind of evolved. If I had showed you earlier images, you could see they look like they were earlier images.
I
Uh,
see.
not as developed in understanding, and so as I mentioned earlier, what I tried to do was about 20 years ago, I started trying to apply the different thinking that has been throughout our history of different periods and so on to my own subject matter because I love the narrative. I'm not a non-objective artist,
I see.
and so I want the story, but I also wanted to go beyond that. I wanted to, as the post-impressionists talked about, they were concerned with what they called artistic sensibilities, you
Uh,
know, instead of just the image, the subject matter. And,
right.
and so I started realizing that there can be more going on. And so over time, my idea was I wanted to draw people in because they could relate to the subject matter. But then I wanted them to discover and to find that there's a whole lot more going on.
In their own mind and hearts, what is going on there? And, I do a painting and different ones look at it in different ways, I find. And
Yeah.
so I see what you was after, that sensitivity and that depth when looking at your painting. You want to draw them in and see how they relate to it. And I follow you 100%.
How they do, and so then I became attracted to abstraction when I finally started understanding it.
Ah,
So, and I think that's true of a lot of things. We often reject things because we don't understand it, but the more we know something about something, we might not love it, but we can at least appreciate and are drawn more to it. And so in my case, someone that didn't like cubism ended up that greatly influencing in aspects what I do. And
yes.
so some of those qualities were I would bring in the quality of transparency
Ah,
because Picasso said the way you depict something is you got to show it from its top and its side and its front and its back, but he was doing it all at the same time.
yes.
So one of the great attractions to me about abstraction is that you're not bound by the rules of depiction of kind of the renaissance of just pictorial space. And while I have those things and purposely do those in mind, meaning pictorial space and those renaissance qualities, if you will,
Right.
uh, I I'm I'm not bound by them, and so I can I can change and make different things happen that wouldn't happen. I can show multiple points of view. I
Yes.
can break up forms into smaller, more interesting spaces. And so
Right.
that's on the visual compositional level, but can also have a more of a, kind of conceptual mindset, because transparency can show interconnectedness and different things like that. And so, depending on the context. And so my work's kind of reflecting that. And so when
Yes, it
something's
is.
when something's overlapping and I'm showing transparency, those lines allow me to create edges where I can change value and color and different things and make it more interesting. And yet I'm still trying to maintain the integrity of my narrative. In other,
Yes, I
in other
see.
words, I want my art to be accessible, but I also want people who want more to be able to get more out of it.
Yes. Well, you know, I've interviewed three or four of the top abstract artists here this year, and I was having a little bit of trouble understanding abstract. But after interviewing these gentlemen, looking at their works and getting their meaning of each, should we say, project, now I have an understanding. I do actually see a freedom in abstract work rather than me sitting there trying to draw every leaf on a tree and every bloom on a blossom. So I'm anxious in a sense to maybe start a little bit of a leaning into the abstract world or even the Cubanism, which is part of that, it seems like. Well,
Part of that.
I want to ask you before time's getting away from us. So, what's your favorite subject matter, and what materials do you like to use? Should we say?
Well, I'm an
Mediums.
acrylic painter.
Okay.
Uh, I do that because it's convenient. I work in my basement. My mother in the studio. My mother-in-law is down there, so oils were never practical
Yeah.
from the aroma point of view. If you
Right. I know that.
and clean up, and also I have found that it works better for the way I like to work, and I can paint over it quickly instead of having to wait for a week or two, and so on and so forth. And it can make corrections and various things like that. And so I really enjoy the qualities that I can get through acrylic.
Yes. Well, do
So
you
that's
start
one
with
of
a
the
sketch or a photograph? How do you
well,
begin a
I'm a
project?
I always try to have visual references. Now, when I do things, it isn't usually just, gee, I want to copy this picture because it's a neat scene. Not that I haven't done that or still might on things if it's really good. But I usually draw from all different kinds of sources, and my compositions are ones that I create. I pull from various sources, various things, maybe unrelated as far as from the original source. And so I do that because I'm trying to get my story, my narrative that I'm working on, and then I start drawing it. And I'm a big believer in drawing and trying to work out the composition, the structure of the space,
Uh-huh.
so that I'm not having to do that when I'm painting.
Yeah, I see. I
Painting's
see.
challenging enough as it is, and so I want to have most of that figured out. Now, to me, there's also this spontaneity that happens, and things change, and you alter stuff, and so on and so forth, and so that also happens. But I like to try to keep that to more of a minimal amount to be
Uh-huh.
able to focus on the other things.
I see. Oh, yeah.
And then I
That's
and
kind of
then I
the
transfer work, and then I transfer it and
uh-huh.
uh, begin painting and working it up in layers, and it takes me a long time.
Layering.
Not
That's a key. Yes. Well, I was going to ask you, but what you'd like to share, but that sounds like it's a pretty good start that you've shared with the viewers worldwide. Um, well, let's see. I'd like to ask you what is your favorite piece that would mean something to you? We'll put it up here on the timeline and talk about this and the meaning behind it. And if it's a favorite, I know every time I start painting, it seems like my next paint project is my favorite. So, do you have a favorite?
Well, in that sense, no. And the reason is, I guess I like my stuff, my, my,
Yes.
my work, and one of the problems I've sometimes people have mentioned is that I don't stick with just one subject matter. I mean, I might do a subject, and some people say that that's that you shouldn't do that, but I'm just have a lot of interests.
Yes.
And so to me, what unifies my body of work is the way I approach it and the style I do it, whether it's more or less of this or that, but and also color and contrast. I'm big into that, and I clearly got that from Benton. And one of the things that attracted me to him was that great color and contrast and abruptness that would happen in his work.
Again,
And so,
that's one that Thomas Hart Benton. I look at your art and I see Thomas Hart Benton every time I view that type, that structure. So that
yeah, so even though I don't draw on that kind of, I call it kind of Baroque El Greco kind of look, but so many other factors. But for example, one piece like the one I did for the when I was artist in residence at the state fair.
yes.
There was a one called "We Told Him Not to Wear the Yellow Shirt," and that's of a guy getting thrown from a bronc, and
Yes.
I had drawn that before I went up there that week, and was working on it. But to me, one of the really fascinating things about it was in meeting people and talking to them about it. Some people influenced some changes that I was making on the spot. And in fact, the title came from when I was talking to a lady and her daughter, and they participated in rodeos and things like that. And so I was explaining to them what was going on, and I said, I'm going to make this guy's shirt yellow because it needs to stand out from the background. And so I was
Right.
talking about those artistic concerns. He says, I don't think a guy like that would ever wear a yellow shirt because that's kind of considered kind of wimpy and cowardly and, things like that. And that isn't this kind of a sport. But then she said, but on the other hand, if he was very confident in himself, I think she said full of himself, someone might do that.
Yes.
And so since he's being thrown and wearing the yellow shirt, I decided to do that. But to me, the reason visually as I look at it, I love the subject matter, the Western, those kind of activities, but also the dramatic, violent change of direction and edges and abrupt color changes and all those things that I love, whether it's in a more realist piece or it's in a very abstract, non-objective piece. I figured out over time that's the kind of stuff I love.
Oh
You know,
yeah, and everyone else probably.
but I also like spicy food and all that kind of stuff. So I like it.
I understand that. Well, again, we're getting close on time. Do you have any closing words you'd like to pass on to the viewers? Maybe a personal message for those just beginning to paint or those that have come to a stop?
Well, I would say that one big thing is persevere, because you're going to have those emotional ups and downs. You're going to have where you aren't motivated or whatever. And so, but I always found when I, in those periods and maybe not doing something, then as soon as I get back into it, it all comes there. And so you got to kind of push through on that. I would also say is, believe in yourself. Now, there's always this period of time where people have to experiment, and one person says try this and you try that, but when you eventually, you're going to find who you are.
Yes.
And so that's what's really critical, where that becomes you.
Well, I want to thank you once again for contributing to Spotlight on the Arts. It's really been inspiring to visit with you, and actually a very informational, educational experience, I'm sure, for everyone. So I want to thank you again, Grant, for finally making this happen.
Well, Rick, thank you for the opportunity. I really, really have enjoyed this.
Thank you, sir. Well, that wraps up another look at an inspiring artist here on Spotlight on the Arts. I want to thank you, viewers, once again for joining me here today and meeting Mr. Grant Kniffen. So I guess I'll cut it short and say, Rick J saying, stay healthy and safe. Don't forget to subscribe to GIJ Global Media OTT Network, my streaming network, and my partner out of St. Louis, a network where you'll see more than just 180 artist interviews, actually of all types. So that's GIJ, Global Media OTT Network. So Rick J saying, take care. See you all next time.